Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and this is a commercial property we just put up for sale. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm also going to talk about all the other commercial properties I have for sale right now too, because I have a number of commercial properties, residential properties I've held as rentals or flips, and some businesses as well. And commercial properties definitely have their own challenges. I'm going to talk about those challenges, what we have for sale, why some aren't selling, and of course we'll talk about a really awful one I bought a while ago that I never should have bought that I've still got too and don't really talk about because I don't want to talk about it. We'll show that one later on. But this is one that's been a really good investment, and it's just time to sell it, mostly because the tenant moved out after 7-8 years, and there's quite a bit of equity, and I think it would be a fairly easy property to sell. Now, commercial is much different than residential when you're trying to sell properties. It's also much different when you're trying to rent properties. And some of these properties I'm going to show you, I would also be fine renting as well. I would do either rent or sell them. Now, the big trick with commercial properties, and when I'm talking about commercial, I'm talking about, retail, industrial, where you have a business, not commercial in like multifamily residential units. A lot of people talk about commercial, being apartments. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about strict commercial, business commercial. So the difficulty with commercial is there's just a lot fewer buyers and a lot fewer renters out there. Pretty much everybody needs a place to live, right? Whether it's an apartment, a house, whether you have roommates, whether you live with your parents or siblings or grandparents, whatever it is, you need a place to live. Well, not everybody needs a business or wants a business or needs a place to run that business. There's so many businesses now you can run out of your house with Amazon and self-publishing books, just so many opportunities out there. And so there's just not as many buyers for commercial properties. Now, there's also not as many commercial properties either, right? There's way fewer commercial properties because there's less demand. So it can just take longer to find tenants. It can take longer to find buyers because commercial properties can be very unique too. Like this property, it's got 2 basements, a weird upstairs, used to be a grain elevator and coal store. It's very unique. And it was a furniture restoration and repair business that operated out of here pretty much the last 50 years. And so it worked out perfect for them how it was set up, but there's not many furniture restoration and repair businesses in business, let alone actively looking for a place to do business. So that can limit, your clientele. Now with commercial, you often have TI, that's tenant improvements, which means the landlord might fix things up. That's one of the creepy basements. They might add bathrooms, add kitchens, paint, do all kinds of work for a tenant to make it work for them as well. So it's not like you have to take a commercial property exactly how it is as a tenant or even as a buyer. But, if the tenant's doing work and spending money on it, that does make it more expensive as well. So there's lots of different things going on with commercial that aren't necessarily going on with residential. And one of the big, big things that limits commercial and can be very frustrating, especially for me and many of you who follow my videos, is the government regulations, zoning, allowing businesses, parking restrictions. There's just so much going on. Now, I did sell a commercial property recently, and one of the biggest reasons it took me a long time to sell that property was parking restrictions. The city was requiring a certain amount of parking for a business to be there, and then grease trap requirements for a restaurant because the place was perfect for a restaurant, but it was really hard for any restaurant to move in there because the city wanted all these requirements, all these things put in place before they would allow a restaurant to operate there. Now, I've also had some issues with other properties I've bought and rented where the county or city was mad at me because I rented to the wrong business, right? I rented to a church where even though zoning said it could be a church, a previous site plan said it was supposed to be a grocery store. And the county wanted me to do a whole new site plan, go through approvals, which could take 4 to 6 months, do work to the property, do all these things, have building codes come out, the fire department, drainage, CDOT, which is Colorado Highway Department because the property's on a highway, to make sure it was okay to have this business move in. And as a commercial landlord or a commercial tenant, if you find a place to rent, it doesn't work out very well if it takes 4 to 6 months to get approval from the city or county or state to be able to use that property as a rental the whole time while the landlord is holding it, waiting. The tenant is sitting there waiting, maybe starting a business, maybe not. And if that turns out not to work out, then they've got to go start the whole process over again. So whether the city or counties like it or not, in a lot of these properties, the tenants just move in. And sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than do it the right way and waste all your time and money and still not get approved. Not saying I do it that way. I just know a lot of properties have it done that way. Another challenge for landlords and tenants too, because a lot of these costs are passed on to them, is at least in Colorado, property taxes are extremely high on commercial properties. So on this property, I think my property taxes are something like $6,000 to $7,000 a year, and I think this property is worth around $400,000. That's a huge tax bill. And so for the landlord to have any kind of return to make money on this property, they've got to charge a pretty hefty rent to cover all their costs. And once you have insurance and taxes and maintenance and your mortgage, all of that, it gets very expensive for tenants, and that causes rents to keep going up. If this was a similar residential property at $400,000, the taxes would probably be like $1,500 a year. That's the difference between commercial and residential is crazy in Colorado. In other states, it might be completely different. They might be similar, but Colorado, it's very tricky. And finally, it's very tricky because of interest rates. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates faster than ever before to fight inflation. I've talked about how I didn't agree with that, but I have to deal with it because they don't listen to me and they won't put me on their board. That raised mortgage rates. It's not a direct increase, but mortgage rates are definitely impacted by the Fed rate. And mortgage rates have stayed high, even though the Fed has lowered their rates a couple times, although nothing close to how fast they raised them. And higher mortgage rates make it tougher to make money on properties too. So investors aren't as likely to buy properties. Owner-occupant businesses, a business who might buy this property, are hesitant to buy it because it's more expensive. And so honestly, a lot of people are kind of in a waiting game, just hoping rates will go down. And they've been in that waiting game for a long time. So you would think, or at least a lot of people assume, because rates are high, prices would come down. There's more inventory, there's more properties, no one's buying them. But that hasn't happened. In fact, prices maybe have gone up for commercial around here. And the biggest reason is there's nothing for sale. There's very few commercial properties for sale right now. And if there were really good deals out there, I would be trying to buy them. That's what I love to do. In fact, I did get another commercial property under contract just recently. It's got some major issues we're trying to work through, so I haven't bought it yet. I actually have 2 commercial properties under contract, sorry. And they're decent deals, but there are reasons for them being good deals. It wasn't because of the market. It wasn't because of rates have caused prices to drop. It's because those properties are very unique, have very unique situations going on with them that I don't mind taking on. As many of you know who watch my channel, I have some very, very unique properties that often have some very interesting challenges, is what I like to call them. Others would call them massive problems. We call them challenges. So with this particular property, we did list it for sale, or at least it should be listed within the next half hour, for $399. It's 3,600 square feet, which doesn't count the upstairs or basements, and it would be one of the cheapest commercial properties in my town. We're in Greeley, Colorado. There's other properties for sale a little bit cheaper, but they're like half the size. So I'm thinking it should sell just fine, but we'll see. And I paid $110,000 for this property in 2017, so I obviously will be doing okay on it. And if we were to get it sold quickly, I might do a 1031 exchange on it into one of the other properties I'm buying. Maybe, maybe not. The timing might not work out with this particular property. So that's one property we just listed, and I'm thinking that property might be one of the easier ones to sell because it's so unique. It's an interesting property. It's got cool history. It's got a lot of space, and it's got a pretty good price to square foot ratio. Now, here's another property we have for sale, and I'll tell some more stories while we talk about it too, about commercial real estate and my journey. And this is one of the first commercial properties I ever bought. and I paid $292,000 for it. I think it was 2017 too. In fact, that previous property was the first commercial property I ever made an offer on, but there were some issues with the seller. It took like 9 months to close or something. So it didn't end up being the first commercial property I bought. It was another one, a shop, which we'll show you here pretty soon. So this property was $292,000, 3,700 square feet on the main floor, plus 3,700 square feet in the basement, but it's an unfinished basement. So this was, I thought, a really smoking good deal too, with the price to square footage. Now it was vacant. It had been used as a dentist, I believe, and maybe a vet's office as well. It was originally designed as a doctor's office to have an apartment downstairs, but that apartment was never built. And the really cool thing about this building is it's zoned mixed use. So it could be residential or commercial or a combination of the two. And so if someone wanted to come through here, spend a bunch of money on it and make it all apartments, you could probably have a very valuable property worth well over $1 million. Again, the challenges come from the city and governments and permits and what all they would require to turn into apartments and how long that would take and the money it would take to do that. But this property is for sale right now for $599,000. Now, we rented it right away. After I bought it and while we were working on the property, we were just sprucing up a little bit. Someone saw it, called me up and asked me if I'd rent it to them. We got a deal done and we had it rented to them for a number of years. They moved out last year. And so we had this for sale for a while, kind of for rent for a while. I had someone who wanted to rent it, but after checking their references and story out, I was not comfortable renting it to them. Just like residential, you want to check out your tenants for commercial, references, credit, their business, all very important to check out, because the last thing you want to do is spend money on a property, fixing it up for a tenant, and then have them move out in 6 months and have a vacant property customized to that tenant that won't work for anybody else. Now, we didn't do a ton of work here for this tenant, but we did do some work, and we'll kind of show you some of that as we move through the property. Now, this one, I would be happy renting or selling. I believe we were getting $4,500 a month in rent for it before. Again, property taxes, insurance is higher on commercial, so we also spent some money on the repairs. So that might seem like a crazy amount of rent for this property, but we weren't making bank. We made money, but it wasn't like we're making thousands and thousands of dollars a month after the expenses, especially the taxes and insurance on this property. Now, this one would be perfect for an office, for a business. Office is a little tricky right now in commercial, so most commercial is doing pretty good. Large office buildings in big cities might be struggling a little bit, but flex space, shop space, industrial space, retail space is actually doing all right. There's still pretty good demand for it. Office has seen a little bit less demand, so that's a little trickier. So we have had some interest, but nothing solid on this property, and it's been for sale for a few months. Now, I did do some weird stuff with all my commercial listings, and I can't remember if I talked about this here or on my private members only channel or not. I talked about some more sensitive stuff on there I don't want to be public. But I'm a real estate broker. I'm primarily a residential real estate broker. I've been one for 4 years or something crazy like that. 23, maybe 22. And so I know residential really well. I know how to sell residential houses. It's what I've done for years and years. I've sold thousands of houses if you count all the foreclosures and HUD homes I sold. Commercial's trickier. There is a definite difference between selling commercial and residential. And so I had some properties for sale. Like I said, I've sold some commercial properties, listed some, bought a lot, but they weren't selling as quickly as I hoped. So I thought maybe I should take my properties off the market. Maybe I should find a commercial agent, have them list them, and that will get them sold quicker. So I did interview a couple of commercial agents, and I'll just say I decided to list them myself again. So, and when doing commercial deals as a buyer is always so different and so hard for me, because I would submit offers on properties and not hear back for a week, even though they're full price offers with no inspection sometimes. I would ask questions and not hear back. I'd A lot of commercial agents want to meet you at the property. It's hard to show the property. It's hard to see them. It's just completely different from residential, where I want to make an offer in like an hour after seeing a good deal and see if I can get it accepted that same day. You've just got to wait and wait and wait on commercial. And so my personality and my residential experience does not mix well with commercial brokers. And so I just decided to list these myself again. And I think I can do a decent job, and we'll see what happens. But this one was for sale for a little while. We took it off the market. Then we just put it back on the market again recently. And that's what I did with a bunch of my properties. So while they've been for sale for a little while, we actually had them off the market for a while and then put them back on. Now, what you'll also find with commercial, including some of my listings and lots of other listings too, is, with residential, a house, if it sits on the market for 30 days, you start thinking, what's wrong with it? Why hasn't this property sold? A house should sell in a week or so, especially in our crazy market we've had the last 5 years, although it's not quite as crazy now. With commercial, you'll see some properties on the market for years. And sometimes they just are priced really high. Sometimes they're very unique and waiting for the right buyer. You just never know. There's lots of reasons. And sometimes they're just making money, and the seller's like, okay, if someone comes along with a crazy offer and wants to pay this, I'll sell it, but I'm not really trying to sell it. And you see that sometimes with land sales too, where it's just like a crazy price on it, and the seller's fine sitting on it, but if the right offer comes along, they would sell it. And so I've done that with a couple of my properties, more residential properties. The Ocho, we do have that up for sale, but I didn't include this in this video because it's all residential. The complex I had for sale for a while, it's not for sale anymore. And I put prices on them that I thought would get some attention, but I knew they were aggressive prices. And so it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't sell them, because they're rented. They're making me money. So if I don't sell them, it's not a big deal. But if I did sell them at that price, then it'd be a good deal for me. So you do see that with commercial, where they might be listed, they might be for sale for a long time before they actually sell. Now, as an investor myself, I hope not to have these properties for sale, not rented, for years and years and years. That's not my goal. Although that has happened with one of them, which I'll show you here at the end I talked about before. Because the taxes, the insurance, the expenses can add up, and it just doesn't make sense to hold them forever, depending on the investor, at least for me. Doesn't mean it still doesn't happen, but that's not the ideal world. So this property is for sale. I would also entertain renting it as well. We'll see what happens with it. With all these properties, I think they would be pretty much sold or in the process of being sold if interest rates were lower. But interest rates have really put a snag on real estate. And as I said, it's not like prices are lower. Prices aren't going lower. It's just stuff isn't selling, and people aren't putting stuff up for sale because they don't want it to sit there and not sell. And a lot of times they have them rented, or they've got good enough deals on them. They don't need to sell them quick. So they're just waiting and waiting. And the high interest game has just created this lag, this lull in the market. And that's what happened in the 70s and 80s as well, where you actually saw prices increase significantly during that time of massively high interest rates, but there were much fewer sales, much less building as well. And we're seeing that now too with less building. And in the long run, less building means low inventory and possibly higher prices. So the raising of interest rates definitely has not helped the real estate market as far as prices, as far as sales, as far as future inventory, but it has made our lives more difficult. So that's a whole nother tangent. So let's check out the next property. All right, this property had some issues a couple of months ago. You might remember where we had the police come and some people broke in, and we've had some issues lately too. We did clean up the weeds and got that done. But this is a property I bought 5 or 6 years ago for $130,000. Is that what I paid for it? And we had it rented. Someone broke my lockbox and got in. That's how they got into it. And then we had some fun with the fire department and police trying to break the door down. Could have called a locksmith, but this made for more entertainment. And I wanted a new door anyway. That's what I'm going with. So anyway, this property again was rented for a number of years from $1,600 to I think $1,800 a month at the end. The business moved out, and they were a smoothie shop, and they were brand new business owners, didn't really know what they're doing. There was some confusion between what I was responsible for and what they were from the lease, because I don't think they understood exactly, how businesses worked in the commercial lease. And there's like another third party involved who we thought we were dealing with, but turns out they were helping out someone else. It was just a little bit of a mess. But they're here for a few years, and then moved out, and so we had this for sale. Now, I think we had this priced at like $299 or $289. So again, definitely I'm in a good position as far as what I bought it for and what I'm selling it for. And we've had some hits on people who wanted to rent it, but they just, I don't know if they found something else or disappeared. But at the last second, we had a couple people just back out and say they didn't want to rent it anymore. Maybe it's because of this. But another example of a property I have for sale, and we took this off the market too. So this hasn't been for sale for a couple of months while I figured out the commercial agent thing and all of that. And we still had some people inquiring, so we left a sign in the window about renting it. So there is demand for it. It's just a matter of finding the right tenants and right people. And of course, we want to be selective too. Because if you find the right tenant in a commercial property, they might be there 10 years or 20 years or longer. And that can be a great situation. So this one we're going to be putting back up for sale again soon as well. There were some kind of homeless, I think, who broke into here and were sort of living in here. And luckily the shop next door to me let me know. And then we do drive by it quite a bit, but we don't always go inside of the property. And we just had no idea someone had broken in because there's no signs of damage or doors open or anything like that. They simply had broken the lockbox and gotten the key. So this one will be listing again. We might list it a little lower this time and see what happens. Again, I'd be willing to rent it, willing to sell it. And I actually talked to an appliance guy I just saw driving down the street the other day, because we are always looking for appliances. Sometimes we're selling appliances. I have a laundromat. We need appliances fixed. And he said he's looking for a new place. So I've sent him the information on this, and who knows, maybe we'll already have it. And we might do another video on this property here soon too, because like I said, we drive by it a lot, drive around the back. A couple times the last month, we saw kind of a house built behind it, like a cardboard pallet house, and had my guys take that down. It appeared again a few weeks later, took down another one. Since then, we haven't seen anything back there. But we have vacant properties, commercial properties. They can attract the wrong people as well. So you've got to keep an eye on them, watch out, and always visit your vacant properties and make sure they're okay. So this one we'll be putting up for sale soon, also for rent, and we'll see what happens there. This one should be an easier one to sell or rent, just because it's smaller, it's more affordable. It's got a storefront. It's on a pretty busy road. But again, we'll need to find the right person. And sometimes that takes some time. It won't usually happen, the first day. The other frustrating thing with commercial properties are roofs. Oh my God. So many of them have flat roofs, and they just leak. It doesn't matter how new they are, how many repairs you make, they leak. This one had a brand new roof that we put on after I bought it. And I feel like every single year when there's a big storm or a big snowstorm, the roof starts leaking. We send out the guys. They fix it. They say it's good. And then 6 months to 12 months later, it's leaking again. And that's happened on a number of our properties. And just the flat roofs just collect water. It's hard to get them set up right. And that's just a major issue with commercial properties. And one of the commercial properties, actually both of them that I have under contract now, both have sloped roofs. So thank you. All right, here's another one we've got for sale. And this is the small shop where I used to store my own materials, and my Mustang was in here for a little while. This was the first commercial property I ever bought, I'm pretty sure. And I actually bought this from a friend who was real tired of the HOA and dead raccoons showing up in his yard. No, that was a raccoon we found when we looked at this after the tenant moved out. And I had bought another property, the compound, that had 3 houses and another shop. The city wouldn't let an automotive repair shop operate there, even though they've been operating there for years and years and years because of their new zoning, and they wanted a variance and us to spend tens of thousands of dollars to let this business stay, which didn't work for us. So unfortunately, they had to leave, and I ended up moving my storage shop over to that spot, and we rented out this building. So I think I paid $72,000 for this in 2017, and we had it rented out for $1,300 a month, I believe. And so it's been a very good investment. We had it listed for $189,000. We had quite a few showings and interest in the beginning, but no one has made an offer on it yet. That was a couple of months ago, I believe. So again, takes some time, but this is one of the cheapest, if not cheapest, commercial properties for sale in our area. There might be one other one cheaper, but it's very small, kind of an old turn-of-the-century storefront that's real chopped up, needs some work. This is the most affordable kind of shop space like this you could find in our area, so we'll see what happens. I probably would be open to renting this as well, but I don't think we actually have it listed for rent. I had decided to sell it. So again, one strategy is you can list stuff for sale and for rent. Whichever comes around first, go with that strategy. Whichever properties sell, you sell, and whichever ones rent, you keep. So that can help things moving. In a perfect world, I could just keep all of my properties and never sell any of them and just keep accumulating properties and collecting rent. But in the grand scheme of things, you do make money on rent with the right properties, but it's not like you're making tens of thousands per property. So it costs money to repair them, for down payments, to buy new properties, to fix them up. And I don't have unlimited funds. I don't have millions of dollars in the bank. For me to continue buying new properties and getting good deals, I've got to sell some of my other properties when we flip houses or sell some of the rentals and different stuff and move on to bigger and better things. Selling those properties allows me to get the money to buy new properties and do more stuff and buy some problem properties, as I said earlier, challenging properties, sorry. Now, here's another property we have for sale. Many of you will know this one too, the small laundromat, car wash, apartment, and shop. This one we put up for sale 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, for $429,000. I bought it for $300,000. I'm really not making a whole ton of money on this because we spent money making it better, adding machines, fixing some things, painting, making the property better. So I'd probably make a little bit at that price, but someone will say, "Oh, you're making $100,000." No, not even close. Especially after commissions, financing costs, things like that, as we've owned the property. But this property's been a ton of fun. I'm so glad I bought it. Yes, it's had its problems like leaking machines and different stuff going on over the last year and a half, but it taught me so much, allowed me to get my other bigger laundromat. And if the apartment's rented, if the shop's rented, it really does make money. So that's a plus. I showed it today, actually, to some buyers who had some other laundromats in the area. I know it's been shown a few times already with some interest, so we'll see. It seems to be having quite a bit of interest so far, just because it's so hard to start a laundromat. If you have one that's already going and working, it's a massive advantage, just mostly for getting the water to run a laundromat. But this one is a business and a commercial property and a residential property. So all of that makes it even a little more challenging to sell, but also opens up some opportunities too. So when selling commercial properties, most of the time you're going to get a commercial loan from a bank, most likely a local bank, probably have 20 to 25% down. But there are things called SBA loans, Small Business Association, which are kind of guaranteed by the government. The government might provide some funding where you can put 10% down, way less down, if you own or occupy the business. Now, that doesn't mean you live in the business. It means it's your business, you own the business, and you own the real estate. So there's owner-occupied houses. There's also owner-occupied businesses where the business owns the building. And so there are some options there, although with high interest rates and different things going on, those have been trickier to get to, just like every other financing. But because you might, operate a business and own the building and some of these properties I have for sale, you might be able to get a pretty good deal. So it's kind of tricky when you're deciding how to sell a commercial property. Should you sell it with tenants in place? Should you sell it vacant? There's many different thoughts there because a business coming in might want to occupy the property. And if it's rented, they can't really do that, or at least not quickly. And they might not be able to get the same financing they want if it's rented. So that's something to think about when selling commercial. It really depends on the property, though. If you have a really big commercial property, it's got like a grocery store or other box store, thing like that, that property vacant might be worth half of what it's worth rented with a long-term lease. So that's a completely different story. You might have some big corporate investors willing to buy that who don't want to find a tenant and don't want to occupy it. They just want it as an investment. So like I said, there's different schools of thought for different properties. But for this one, I decided to leave the apartment vacant and the shop vacant just because someone might want to live there, run it, use it for their business, or expand the laundromat even. There's that possibility too. So I want to leave my options open. And it really wouldn't be terribly difficult to rent out this apartment or the shop if you wanted to. It was fairly easy for us to do that. Now, the other really interesting thing about this is what I was looking into. You might be able to get FHA financing on this property because with FHA, you can buy a mixed-use property that has a business if the residential is 51% or greater than the size of the property. Now with this one, it's really close. Like it's kind of half and half. You might be able to say it's 51% residential if you don't count the shop, or you say, hey, that's not a commercial shop. That's the garage for the residential, right? Or the car wash is outside, so you wouldn't really count that as business square footage, I think. It's outside. So you may be able to get an FHA loan on this if you live in the property. Now, I don't know how many people are looking to do that, but there might be some, and that just opens up some more possibilities to selling this property. And very interesting fact about FHA, not just working for residential. You can buy FHA on a 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, but you can use FHA and some owner-occupied loans on a mixed-use property too. So this property is for sale. Like I said, we've had quite a few showings, quite a bit of interest. No offers yet, but if we don't sell it, it's not the end of the world either, because I still go there, collect quarters, have my fun car Friday, drive out here for 15 or 20 minutes, do some live recordings on TikTok or YouTube or different platforms, and it solves lots of purposes and is still fun for me. But it does take some time cleaning and doing some different things and making videos for it. So it's also, if I did sell it, it would free up a lot of time for me to do some other things as well. So kind of a win-win situation both ways. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it would be nicer if it sold rather than here. We have one of the properties I sold this commercial. So I know we haven't seen many of those. This is an old restaurant I had for many, many years. And this is not a feel-good, amazing investment story, even though it sold, because I bought it for $105,000, I think. We sold it for $190,000. And after holding it for like 4 or 5 years and doing some rehab and stuff, I can't imagine we made any money. I don't really want to look at that report when it comes out. But it was a learning experience. You learned be very careful with restaurants and zoning and parking and all that. This is the one I was talking about earlier, where it was a restaurant before, operated as a restaurant for like 50 years, but a lot of the code violations that restaurant had were grandfathered in for parking, for grease traps, for different things. That restaurant shut down for a while after the owner passed away, unfortunately. Then it came up for sale, and since it shut down for a while, it pretty much lost all of its grandfathering for parking and grease traps and different stuff. So we had probably 20 different people who wanted to open a restaurant here after I bought it. I was willing to rent it or sell it. None of them could make it work with the city. The city was requiring outdoor grease traps or more seating or bigger bathrooms. It's just such a small restaurant, a small place. It's hard to make it work, or it'll just cost too much money to make that work. And nothing worked out. Finally, it is actually a restaurant who made an offer, bought it, and we'll see what opens up. Because I didn't even ask. I was selling the property. I don't know what kind of restaurant it is. Don't know what kind of food it is. They made me an offer. I got excited. I said yes. And it sold. I'm like, all right. So it's a big surprise to me what it will open up as. And maybe they'll let me do a video on the property once it's done. That'd be kind of cool to see what they turn this into and what they do with it. But that's yet to be seen. I haven't asked them or talked to them about that. Now, what's interesting too is we did stucco, we did electrical work, we pulled permits, we got the city's sign off and a lot of this different stuff. Then when the buyer was coming through and talking to the city, they said, oh, you've got all these open code violations and permits that weren't done. I'm like, what? And so they're like, you might have to tear down half the building. I was like, okay, that was odd. So I talked to the buyers about it, sent them all the pictures, showed them the documentation we had, and they checked with everything, and they said, okay, we're still good with it. They went through and bought it. And then after it sold, like a few days, the city sent me like open permit, warnings, code violations, all these on the permits that we'd had closed out already for years. And I guess, I don't know why they didn't tell us before, if something got missed, but we'd already sold the property. And so hopefully the new buyers, they haven't told me or mentioned any issues or problems after owning it, but hopefully they get it all figured out. It's all okay. But the picture showed, we did not do structural major work here. We cleaned up a lot. We took out some non-functional walls and pretty much half walls, things that weren't even attached anywhere. That was pretty much it, and just kind of opened it all up. So I just want to show this property to prove that, yes, I am able to sell commercial property, even if it's just one. Although I did sell another one too. We'll show you the awful deal I did here next, and I did another deal with it that was the cheapest property I ever bought, and we did sell that one as well. Didn't make any money on that one either. The next one was just more of me being an idiot because the property was so cool and interesting to me and not really having any idea what I would do with it. So that was definitely my fault, and I learned a lesson there too. But hopefully we can get that one sold at some point, but not much has been happening with it so far. We can talk about some of the issues and struggles with it too, and things we learned about it after buying it. So a lot of these properties I buy, maybe I don't do all the research I should do, get them under contract. Sometimes we figure out problems and issues before I buy them. Sometimes we figure them out afterwards, and people might say, oh, can't believe you did that. You didn't do your due diligence. You messed up. And yeah, you're right. We do that a lot. But at the same time, I bought a lot of deals that way as well, like the first furniture store. And if I didn't act fast and do that and jump into the deal, I wouldn't have gotten that deal. Or someone else would have gotten it. Or sometimes the seller realizes, oh, this is way underpriced, or something else happens. And so the good deals have outweighed the bad ones. And sometimes it just takes jumping in and taking those risks and figuring things out later. And sometimes you get burned a little bit, but you just hope the good deals work out more than the bad ones. And so far, I think that's happened. Here's another property that I've been talking about for a while that did not work out like it was supposed to. And part of the reason is I really didn't know how it was supposed to work out. I just bought it. And so this brick building here, the red brick, the white building next to it, Vaughn's Furniture, I bought a long time ago, like in 2020 or something stupid. It had been vacant for a decade or more when I bought it. And that seller, I think they bought it thinking the same thing I did. It'll be cool. It's a good investment. And then they sat on it for a long time and lost a bunch of money when they sold it. So that's the same position I'm in right now. I also bought, like I said, a building right to the right of that white building. If I show it here, for like $23,000 or something. I think we sold it for $30,000. But again, after costs and different stuff we didn't make any money on that. I ended up paying $150,000 for this building. It's in Brush, Colorado. So that's one mistake I made. Is an hour away from me. It's just too far away for me to pay attention to it and do much with it. If it was in my local area, we could do some amazing stuff with it. But it's just too far away for us, and I have too many other things going on to really do what would do this property justice. And it's huge. It's like 18,000 square feet. And I thought, what could go wrong paying $150,000 for an 18,000 square foot building? Well, I figured out what could go wrong. You just have it sitting there doing nothing for a really long time, and you can't sell it. And one issue with buyers too is it's too big for them. They want something smaller. They don't want something this large. Now, this is one of the creepiest buildings I was into. The basement was just super sketchy and weird. I don't believe in ghosts. I just talked about that in a video I did last week about hauntings and different stuff, which you have to disclose. But this property did make me the most antsy and anxious to get out of any property I've ever had. I don't know if it was haunted, but maybe just I have the feeling someone's in there and might try to murder me at some point. And there were signs of people being in the building and on the roof and different spots. And the basement is just crazy. So it's an old, 100-year-old plus building, kind of two buildings put together. This used to be a hotel way, way back in the day, and the one was a separate business to the right of me that's attached to it now. It used to be like a car shop, has a concrete floor back in the day, back when kind of concrete, well, I guess repair shops have been inside for a long time, but this one has a basement, the other side just concrete floor without a basement. And so I bought it and tried to figure out what to do with it. The city said they'd give me grants and help me out. None of those worked out for various reasons because I wasn't like an owner-occupant who's going to start a business there. A lot of times you'll hear that from cities and, oh, we've got tons of grants, we've got tons of money to help you out, and rarely has that ever come through, at least for me. Maybe it's me always talking about how I have issues with the cities, and that's why I don't get that money. Who knows? But, yeah, that didn't happen. We tried renting it out for a while. It had some people interested, but they just didn't want something this big. And so we've had it for sale for like $200,000 and then like $150,000. I think we had it down to $130,000 for a while and have not had much interest at all. This is another one I took off the market and we'll be putting back on the market again here soon. Now, this is when I first got it. We did clean it up a tiny bit, a little bit. This is where the roof collapsed on one side too. We had the roof fixed, repaired through insurance. It has a brand new roof with slope now because it was a flat roof before. Did a lot of work on this property that cost us some money, but not as much as it could have been because of insurance. So again, it's a cool property, lots of creepiness going on. It has 3 upstairs, 2 basements. It's weird, but that's one reason why I bought it, which I made a rule after I bought this property. Don't buy properties just because they'll make cool videos on YouTube or because you think they're cool. Just buy properties because the numbers make sense. You know what you'll do with it. You have exit strategies, etc. So this one is probably one of the worst properties I've ever bought. And Nikki, my project manager who helps with everything I do, was adamant, don't buy this. You're an idiot. Don't buy this property. And I didn't listen. So I try to listen sometimes, but I don't always listen. And sometimes it works out for me, but in this case it did not. And the other bad thing is I haven't been here in so long. I have had some people check it out, some people working for me who were in the area, like, hey, check out the building while you're out there, and they've checked it out and said, hey, it's still standing, nothing too crazy going on. But I personally haven't been here in a long time. Part of that's just because I don't want to be reminded of how awful of an investment it's been and that I shouldn't have bought it. Not that going there will change any of that, but I don't know. That's just my thinking. So this one hasn't worked out like the others. It hasn't been a great investment. It could be really cool too. We've talked to the town. You could put apartments upstairs. The problem is there's no plumbing up there or bathrooms, so you have to spend a lot of money doing that. You could make the lower parts commercial fronts and put apartments in the back. There's a big shortage of housing here still, so if you could make it residential somehow, that'd be amazing. But it's got a massive, massive limitation that we keep talking about. It has almost no parking. It just has street parking in front of it, and the town, county, city, whoever it is who does all the permits and different stuff has said, you've got to find different parking. If you do residential, if you do change of use, go through that stuff and add apartments, you've got to have dedicated parking spots, not on the street, for this building. And there's almost nowhere to put them. There's buildings all over the block. And, it actually would have worked out better probably had I not sold the small building, because the small building right next to it probably could have been torn down and had enough parking for this building to be residential. But hindsight's 20/20, and I sold that. And I don't even know if that building's been remodeled or being used right now, who knows? Maybe I could go back and make them an offer to buy it again for an even cheaper price, and then we could turn it into parking. But again, I don't know if even that would help this sell or not, or how big of a difference that would make. So that's our story with one of the worst commercial properties I bought and what's going on with it right now, which is nothing. And I really need to do something with it. We'll get it listed again. And maybe on this one, because it's farther away from me, I might talk to a local agent to have them listed for me. There aren't many commercial agents in that town, though, is the thing. And I do have buyers once in a while who've called me who want to see it, and we'll send it to agents out there for buyers. So maybe we'll talk to some of them about possibly, working with listing it for us too. And, it's like, hey, maybe they could give us some information on what they think it's worth. But valuing this property for anybody is very difficult. You just have to kind of wait around for the right buyer, right opportunity. Someone willing to make a giant brewery, restaurant, arcade, secret casino in the basement type of business, which could be amazing. So if you're that person, please contact us. We're ready to make a deal. All right. That's what we've got. Those are the commercial properties I have for sale. I should say, too, before we leave, there was another one I bought even farther away from me in Sterling, which is an hour and a half away. A big, giant warehouse. It was that 80,000 square feet? It was cheap. I paid 200 and some thousand for it. Didn't know what to do with it. We actually had part of it rented out for a little while. Some cars were renting space, RVs, and a company came along, a big company came along and bought that for like $400,000. So that one worked out. We made up money on it. Another commercial property we sold. I told you guys I could sell commercial properties. It was far away, so it kind of broke all the rules that I've learned from this property and still did okay. But some could say I got lucky that a big company wanted it, and it was set up as a big warehouse. It was set up much better than this building for a lot of different uses. So it's probably a better property overall. All right, now I'm done. Thanks for watching. We'll try and link some of these videos. If you want to see specific videos from this video, let me know, and I'll try and link them. And we'll have many more videos on my properties, residential, commercial, my businesses, laundromats, liquor store, many more, all of that. Possibly a new liquor store we're buying, possibly another commercial property we're buying that's very interesting, as I said earlier. And of course, we'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching. Be back soon.